Our special guest this morning is the Indonesian Ambassador to Sweden, His Excellency Kamapradipta Isnomo. Good morning, Pak Kama. There you are.
Good morning, Paul, and good morning, Aubrey. Thank you for having me.
Good morning, Pak Kama. But before we talk more about Ramadan in Sweden, we have a little quiz for our guests. It's kind of like a test. We like to call I Love Indonesia test. So, are you ready, Pak?
What a surprise, of course.
Right.
Okay, so the first question is, who composed the Indonesia Raya?
W.G. Supratman, W.R. Supratman.
Correct!
Good job. All right. Great. You're off to a great start, by the way. All right. This one, I actually had to look this one myself. I'm embarrassed to say. But how many provinces does Indonesia have?
Okay, 34.
34. All right. 2 for 2.
Okay,
On a
and
roll.
what is the name of a large puppet native to Betawi people?
I think it's called Ondel Ondel.
Yay!
Okay, that
Okay.
one I knew because of my kid, because she loves it. She keeps pointing it out. Ondel, ondel, daddy. All right, next up. Who is Indonesia's dangdut king?
Ooh, I know the queen, but the king
yes.
would probably be Mr. Roma Irama.
He certainly is. Yes, there is only one dangdut king here.
And last one is
Okay.
name some Indonesian traditional sports.
Traditional sports. Okay, I think the immediate one I can think of is pencaksilat,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it was inscribed by UNESCO.
Yes,
And
definitely.
the other is probably sepak takraw.
Yes.
Right, that's more than one. That's it. All right.
That's okay.
Okay,
All right.
there's one that when I was looking this up because I had to research these answers to make sure that I am familiar with all of them, is karapan sapi. It's the race with the buffalo,
Yeah.
right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that
From
one,
East
because
Java.
I've actually seen that on some international programs as well. Anyway, perfect. 5 for 5. Great job, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
And let's talk a little bit about Ramadan. I hope you're having a good Ramadan over there. But obviously, Sweden is in contrast to the country we looked at yesterday, which was Malaysia. Can you tell us a little bit about how Ramadan is celebrated over there?
Well, Ramadan is quite an interesting time here because we are in the middle of pandemic, and in the midst of Ramadan, the government is introducing some protocols and some regulations pertaining to COVID-19. So everyone is, at least all the Muslims here, are celebrating Ramadan in a very cautious manner and fashion. Throughout pandemic, for instance, the mosques have been closed to the public, but this also goes to other places of worship such as churches and synagogues. So the celebration festivity has been quite silent and serene and kept and reserved in their respective homes. In terms of shops and other shopping malls, all the public places are open, but of course local regulations on health protocols are continuously applied.
What about in the case of, let's say, if one wanted to go to pray at a mosque or any sort of activities that regularly take place? How is that different this year?
Well, the mosque has been closed at least since November, since I arrived last year, and this also applies to other places of worships. So the advice by the government is not to assemble for at least 8 people per houses or per units. So in terms of mosque, I think prayers are being done individually or collectively in a small number in individuals' homes.
Okay, Pak Kama. If you talk about other countries, for example, like in Malaysia, there is a food bazaar that opens near the time to break the fast. So, is there a similar bazaar in Sweden as well?
No, as I said, because it's in the middle of pandemic, so the government is trying its best to keep as minimum as possible and as far as possible from creating public events that involves more than 8 or 9 people. So everything is being kept in a low profile now until regulations are coming up by the government. So I think this will continue until we don't know when, but hopefully COVID will be over soon, so everyone can celebrate Ramadan in various cities throughout Sweden.
Yeah, it seems to me, Pakama, that over in Sweden, they're pretty strict about keeping these rules in place. But I wouldn't say in normal times, but without this pandemic, how would normally be celebrated? Like, how would Muslim traditions be carried on over in Sweden? Because, as I said, if we compare to other places, maybe closer to Indonesia that have similar traditions, a lot of the same sort of customs and activities take place. But what would it normally be like in Sweden if we were celebrating, let's say, last year?
Well, there is a sizable Muslim population here in Sweden. In the past, at least prior to pandemic, celebrations of Ramadan has been primarily focused on around the mosque in various cities and regions in Sweden, such as after prayers they would probably sell some food. After Maghrib prayers, they would sell drinks and other goods that are being sold to have families have their iftar together at homes. And of course, Muslim families here would congregate in restaurants and shopping malls to have their iftar. So this has been the tradition prior to the pandemic, but ever since the pandemic, things have been kept quite low key. And for the sake of protocol and health safety.
Indeed.
Okay, yeah. But talking about your experience, Pakama, what was your most memorable Ramadan moment as an ambassador?
In Stockholm.
Yes. So far.
Yeah.
Okay, so far it's probably the thing is here the restaurants are closed at 8:30 p.m. To observe the pandemic regulations.
Okay.
So the most memorable one is, of course, when my family and I had to rush to supermarket to make sure that
you had everything you need.
we have everything we need to rush back home and start cooking for our iftar.
True.
And we've done that at least twice because we seems to forget to do our shopping, but at least that's the memorable one. I'm hoping that by next year the pandemic will be behind us, so we could have a more memorable iftar experience in Sweden.
Sure, and at least somewhat more under control, so more normal activities can resume. But speaking of suhoor and iftar, normally in Indonesia or various other countries, there are certain types of food, like say in the Middle East, that are unique that people search for when it comes to breaking your fast or preparing to fast. And especially in Indonesia, I'm sure you've heard as well that we've had our own restrictions. Restaurants are allowed to open till 9, but in order to accommodate the large majority of the population here, those hours have been now extended and pushed back, so people can still order food for either delivery or takeaway up to 2 a.m. Now, what is it like there? What would be like a local dish or delicacies that a Muslim would look for over in Sweden, and what would be available now? In fact, at certain times of the night where restaurants normally wouldn't be open.
Well, the biggest proportion of the Muslim community in Sweden are mainly originating from Turkey and also the Middle East. So you see a lot of strong Turkish and also Middle East influence when it comes to iftar. So when we go for iftar, at least we go for the famous Turkish kebab or the famous falafel from the Middle East. These are really delicious snacks for us to at least to break our fast every day during the month of Ramadan. And of course, there's the famous the halloumi, and then the famous Turkish yogurt and the famous Turkish tea. In terms of Indonesian food here, I think most Indonesians, they go to Indonesian restaurants here. At least there are 3 in Stockholm. I think couple of them have been interviewed by you in the past.
Yes, indeed.
You and they know that they are catering for Indonesians, so they would provide kolak and the traditional cendol and the sweets and something that would break for iftar.
That's nice. If I was there, I would be breaking my fast every day with some
Yeah.
nice baklava for sure.
Yeah, baklava is really nice.
Baklava.
But Pak Kama, do you use Ramadan as a moment to engage in diplomacy?
Yes, indeed. There is a huge, like I said, there's quite a sizable Muslim population here. I try to reach out with the Muslim communities here, even though the mosques are closed, but they are most receptive to meet me. Of course, in strict adherence to local regulations, because we can only assemble no more than 8 people.
Right.
So we have to really carefully plan our meeting prior to having encounters.
And in regards to, normally I'm sure there would be activities such as breaking fast together and things of that sort. But what is it like at the embassy this year? Obviously, if you're only limited to 8, are you still at least having small group gatherings to at least break fast together once in a while? I know in Malaysia they said they were still at least getting together once a week to break your fast, and that's having to, of course, adhere to their protocols as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, as much as I love to host Indonesian community in our embassy, but I have to abide by the local regulation. So
Sure.
what I do is I invite 6 to 7 representatives or members of Indonesian societies here in Sweden over to our residence, and we would have a chit chat before iftar, and then we'll have iftar together and have another talk and see how they're doing, because it's really difficult for us at the embassy here to meet them physically because of the regulations. But at least we are in constant contact with them electronically, virtually, and once in a while, every 2 weeks, I would invite them over from various Indonesian associations to have a chit chat and encounters and talks, and just to see how they're doing throughout the pandemic and throughout Ramadan.
Yeah, Pak Kama, I know it's a bit of a downer and an otherwise normally happy time or happy season, but I'm glad actually to hear that the protocols are being adhered to over there, and you guys are obviously being strict with it, and that's obviously a step towards the right direction, because we do want things to get better. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a good fast today and for the rest of Ramadan as well. Stay healthy, and we hope to talk to you again soon. I do have some family in neighboring Norway, so once this pandemic is over, I'll visit. I've always wanted to go to Sweden, so we'll swing on by one day and maybe we'll have a meal together.
Thank you, Pak Kama.
You're more than welcome, Paul, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a
you,
great
Pak
day.
Kama.
Thank you.